Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone is good. In today's video, I'm going to talk about SHEIKH Muhammad Al Shareef. Alhamdulillah, I'm really inspired by his work. I'm really excited to share with you guys about him. It's actually crazy, subhanAllah, about how he pioneered the way in which we obtain Islamic knowledge now in the West, and he really did something that was really powerful, but he revolutionized it, meaning he's an inventor. He's not somebody who is just average and founds a company, an Islamic institute. This is somebody who changed the way in which the West has operated in terms of how we receive knowledge and how we use knowledge and how we congregate together. SubhanAllah, this is very powerful in what I'm going to talk about his work, So I hope that you guys can pioneer something that people will copy, way after you pass, subhanAllah. Muhammad Al Shareef was born in Winnipeg in 1975, which is in Canada, alhamdulillah. He started Islamic knowledge at a very young age. He actually had to travel for Islamic education on a plane.
11 years old. And I had the opportunity to go to Islamic school, and the Islamic school was 2 hours away by airplane.
He became a Hafid, alhamdulillah, at a very young age, around 10, I believe. And then he later became a student of University of Medina in 1997. That's when he graduated, I believe. There was an instance in which he was sharing this with Yasser Qadi at the time. So him and Yasser Qadi were both in the University of Medina at the time, and they started to become friends because they were both from the West. So Muhammad Al Shareef had, told him, I have this vision, I have this vision of bringing the information that we're learning in school and bringing it to the West. And Yasser Qadi at the time was like, whoa, what do you, how, this is only something that can be taught in Medina. But he's like, no, I'm gonna bring this, to the West. I want to teach this in the West. There has to be a way in which they can obtain this information. So he already had a target, he already had a why, and he also was starting to develop the how is this going to work. So he kind of had that in his pocket already. He had this vision, and he was trying to tell his friend this is something that we're gonna do, right? So he combined the PowerPoints, the way you sit in in your desk, it being in a university classroom and presenting material to the class. So that's what he did. That was his first ever taste when he came back to America. From this point on, when he came back from the University of Medina, it is based in US. He did establish Al-Maghrib here in Canada, but a lot of it is densely populated or began in America, because when he founded Al-Maghrib Institute, it was in America. So let's actually look at the institute, Al-Maghrib. So when I look at the time in which they had been established, it's crazy to me because there's actually not a lot of anything around that time. There was nothing connecting local communities and regions together in a way where it was cohesive in a mission, right? In bringing more and more people together rapidly. There were these bodies, but they weren't bringing in a lot of people. Even in a masjid setting, you're not going to have a lot of people because at the time, the English wasn't the primary form of communication. So he targeted so well in planting these classes in universities and colleges. So this, again, revolutionizing Islamic education. Starting in 2001, he basically so this is my summary notes: westernized system of lectures, ability to take notes, teaching techniques of the West, but combining with East's intensity of education. So meaning that he knew the intensity of the East. He wanted to still have that somewhat intensity. So there would be seminars all day, there would be like weekend courses. It was to the depth, right? It wasn't just surface level. He really wanted to be giving people the ability to equip themselves with, because it's not accessible, right? So he made knowledge accessible in its intensity. So I'm going to go over 3 things in which Sheikh Muhammad Al Shareef did, subhanAllah, for the Ummah, and some of the outcomes in which he accomplished. One of them would be that he elevated the people. And he provided a way in which they could have gotten sustenance, because when they had finished their schooling in Medina, it was kind of at a loss, right? You come home, you haven't worked in the West, you don't really have the Western diplomas, right? Like, you're kind of at a loss. So he basically took people and he's like, you know what, you have this in you, like empowering people to actually be employed, to actually have a way to sustain their families. So he elevated people in one way, which would be employment, but obviously the main thing here was elevating people in their Islamic knowledge, subhanAllah, and being able to see people's strengths. As a teacher, you see the strengths of your students and you want to empower them inside the classroom, and he elevated these people. The second thing that he was able to do well was that he was able to raise the standard of Islamic education, right? Honestly, even now, he still has this one unique thing. Like in Al-Maghrib, there's a degree that you can get. Again, combining that kind of like Western perspective of credits and things like that, you collect a certain amount of credits going to so many Al-Maghrib classes and seminars, and there's essays that you write, and he has there's a whole curriculum that you can achieve in the West for Islamic studies. He really thought that, and this is a saying from him, educated people make better decisions. People were criticizing the way that it was done. It wasn't in a masjid, and there wasn't the soft voices and the quietness of just waking up at Fajr, and it wasn't like this type of glamorization of piety with education, with knowledge. It was, let's take knowledge where these places are. Let's bring the knowledge to the people. And that was universities, that was colleges. And there was this backlash also because he was charging for the seminars to take place and the educational classes to take place, meaning that there was resources, and it was a business. At the end of the day, he wanted to take it large. He wanted to employ more scholars, and he wanted to do so much with it. So there was a cost, and people were judging him on that. He was a visionary, and he was a pioneer. He basically said criticism is on the road that I'm walking. It is underneath me. It's like a path, and it's just something natural. He had to battle a lot of there was a psyche of him. This was somebody who there was competitions at one point with another institute, but he's as long as there's more dawah, coming from you having to realize that you have to keep going. Excuses, he was mentioning his lecture, and I'll be able to maybe find the lecture to put, and I recommend you listening to the full thing, because he was saying that these are the 5 ways to live a full life. He talked about salah, but he was talking about all these 5 things, but before those 5 things of how to have a full life, he said that excuses, oh, I don't know if I can do this, or that was number 1, that these are gonna try to knock you down. And then the second thing was criticism. Yeah, so that's my video on Sheikh Muhammad Al Shareef. I did want to inform people who don't already know. This was really, really public, and this was a really hard hit on the communities, and this was SubhanAllah, I think a lot of people do already know that he did pass away. May Allah be pleased with, he did pass away. May Allah be pleased with him. 2022, he did pass away suddenly, but I really wanted to, make dua for him. The impact that he did was revolutionary, and all the institutes you see came from Allah, first of all, but they came from a source, an idea to be selfless. This was a selfless thing to spread knowledge, to make it so that we don't have to burden ourselves. Subhanallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.